Good evening, I'm Katerina Georgieva. This is CBC Windsor News. Thanks for watching. Tonight, we'll tell you why landlords and property managers have been protesting at City Hall. Plus, valuable scrap metals are being stolen throughout the city. We'll tell you what's being done to stop it. A warning from the health unit. Get vaccinated with whooping cough on the rise. And Motor City or Cycling City? We'll go for a tour at a new exhibit at the Chimchuk. Let's start tonight with that protest at City Hall. Some landlords and property managers say that they are being unfairly targeted. They rallied in front of Windsor City Hall today about a new pilot project. As CBC's TJ Deere reports, the city is requiring some landlords to pay rental licensing fees, and they're not happy about it.
Roughly 200 landlords and property managers stood outside Windsor City Hall, wanting an explanation from Mayor Drew Dilkens. They were arguing against a 2-year pilot project known as the Residential Rental Licensing Pilot Study, or RRL, which started on February 13th.
This is not a very good plan implemented all at once. So it needs to be rethought. The process and the RRL in many aspects is unfair. So the landlords are speaking up.
The licensing study requires landlords to pay $466 per rental unit. That's only for buildings up to 4 dwelling units. Landlords say they can't absorb the extra fees and will have to pass the extra cost onto their tenants, but rent can only be increased by up to 2.5% this year. So one of those landlords says the extra costs could force him and others to sell their properties, which will have repercussions across the west end of the city.
There will be chaos on the street. There will be rental crisis in the city. And a lot of investors are going to start selling their investment in Windsor, so it's going to de-evaluate all these properties in the Ward 1 and Ward 2.
Another aspect of the pilot project is that it only applies to landlords in Wards 1 and 2. Landlords want to see the project rolled out across the entire city.
Well, it's either everybody or nobody. That's what I'm against.
In response to their concerns, Ward 1 Councillor Fred Francis said that the number of protesters pales in comparison to the number of residents that say this has been an issue for years. He also said that a lot of people are welcoming the change and like the extra measures of safety precautions that Council is putting forward. Eventually, Teshuba was told by city officials that their grievances were passed up to Mayor Dilkens and that a few of them would be allowed to meet with the mayor. However, after about 2.5 hours, the crowd started to thin out. The mayor's office tells CBC News that Mayor Dilkens was not able to meet with the protesters, citing scheduling conflicts. Although the new pilot project does not apply to his ward, Ward 7 Councillor Angela Marignani said that the landlords assembled outside City Hall have valid concerns.
As a city, we're doing our due diligence in ensuring safety for people who come and move into our city just short term for educational reasons.
Some of the protesters told Teshuba that if they don't hear from the city, they'll stage another protest outside the office of Ward 2 Councillor Fabio Costante next week. TJ Deere, CBC News, Windsor.
We recently told you about the theft of valuable metals from the former Silver City movie theater in South Windsor. The owner says metal thefts are the worst he's ever seen. And today we are learning more about what's being done around the city to deter these kinds of crimes. Dale Molnar has more.
We have a considerable amount of properties and we have been hit, but I'm not alone in this.
Joe McHale is talking about the increasing incidence of scrap metal thefts, even right from the walls and air conditioners of his buildings. Thieves are also stealing catalytic converters out of parked cars. They're doing it to get at the precious metals inside that fetch a lot of money. But companies like Enwin are fighting back. They're using ground wires that are harder to cut and worthless to sell because the copper can't be extracted very easily from them.
We used to use a pure copper wire such as this as our grounding conductor, and now what we're using is a copper covered steel cable. So it has the same ability to carry current when it needs to, but it is a lot less valuable as an item for scrap dealers, so they won't pay money for this.
The scrap metal industry is participating in a website called scraptheftalert.com. Companies can report scrap metal theft so buyers and police in a certain area can beware.
All right, we've got some stainless steel.
At the metal supermarket store on Walker Road, the owner is installing security cameras along with other precautions to protect his inventory of new metal.
So we've got new cameras coming in. We've got fencing up, locked doors, and a security alarm.
What seems to be high in demand in terms of the price and whatnot?
Aluminum is high, stainless is high. Our cold roll is higher. Prices of steel they're up there.
Windsor police can't say if scrap metal theft is on the increase or by how much, but they do say it's a problem. But they say it's really hard to prosecute the thieves, even if they're caught with the metal.
Yeah, if we catch somebody with a cow converter that's been cut off a vehicle or a piece of copper, there's no serial number or identification number to say it came from this person or that person, or that it was stolen. It was just that they're in possession of a piece of metal.
Peel Regional Police recently offered a program to have catalytic converters etched with identification to make it harder for them to be sold. Young says you can also be careful where you park.
It's very difficult to prevent these type of thefts. But as far as your vehicle, parking your vehicle in high visibility areas with lots of light will help deter suspects.
Dale Molnar, CBC News, Windsor.
The health unit is warning there's an uptick in whooping cough cases in Windsor, Essex, mostly in children. Officials are urging the community to update their vaccines. Families with children under a year old are particularly asked to be on alert. Symptoms can include runny nose, congestion, sneezing, a mild cough, and a fever. And this message comes a day after nearly 2,000 elementary students were suspended over out-of-date immunization records. The infectious disease is highly contagious and, if untreated, can lead to serious complications, including pneumonia, and in some cases can be fatal.
We have had 18 cases of whooping cough in these past few months. That's an extraordinary increase in the number of cases. Those cases are primarily among people who are inadequately vaccinated or not vaccinated at all. We encourage two things. We encourage all people to come up to date on their vaccines. And secondly, if you do have symptoms consistent with whooping cough, to see your doctors and to try to get treatment, because there is treatment available for it. But the best treatment is to prevention, and the best prevention is to get vaccinated.
Turning to Ottawa now. It's been a wild day in the Commons with some major developments related to inquiries into possible election meddling by China. After weeks of pressure, a reversal from the Prime Minister's office. It now says Justin Trudeau's Chief of Staff, Katie Telford, will appear before a Commons committee.
What we really need is the full truth. He's named his neighbor, family friend, ski buddy, and member of the Beijing Finance Trudeau Foundation to look into the matter, which is nothing more than a delay. Will he allow Canadians to get to the truth and prevent this from happening again before the next election with a full public inquiry now?
This is an extremely serious issue and should not be a partisan issue. That's why we named David Johnston as the independent expert to identify any gaps in our system. He will make public recommendations, which could include a formal inquiry or some other independent review process, and we will abide by those recommendations.
Canada's inflation rate slowed again in February. Statistics Canada reports it dipped to 5.2%, down from 5.9% in January. Much of the decline is attributed to falling prices for energy, led by gasoline, which is down nearly 5% compared to a year ago. Grocery prices continue to increase by double digits, though, coming in 10.6% higher in February. The continued slowdown in inflation means there's less pressure on the Bank of Canada to continue raising interest rates. Starting today, you can now track your passport application online. The federal government unveiled a new system that will free up more staff to process passports and says the backlog has been virtually eliminated. But as Catherine Cullen reports, there's still work to do to modernize the passport experience.
Well, the government certainly has faced some challenges on the passport front. If you think back to spring of last year, you might recall those remarkably long lineups in some Canadian cities. Some real tales of woe as people feared that they were going to miss their travel because they couldn't get their hands on a renewed passport. Earlier this year, the government said that the passport backlog had been virtually eliminated. Now they say the backlog is completely eliminated. Beyond that, they want to tell people that there is a new way to check the status of your passport application. Go to canada.ca/passport-status. And on that site, you can check What is happening with your application? Has your new document been printed? Is it on its way to you? It's a way to keep track of all of that information. Of course, Canadians are used to being able to check this kind of thing online when it comes to, for example, a package that they've ordered. So why has it taken so long when it comes to passports?
I asked the exact same thing when I became minister because I found it hard to believe that you could track your package through Canada Post or through Amazon, but we didn't have that same opportunity for passports. It was something that became abundantly clear, and it's a big lesson learned from the situation where we were a year ago.
It is possible, though, that other challenges loom on the horizon. Contract negotiations continue with the civil service right now, and the minister did say today that the government has a contingency plan in place in the event that there is a strike, although she said she's hopeful that that can be avoided. There's also the bigger question of modernizing the passport process. The minister said that they are looking at a process where people would be able to apply online for passport renewal, something she hopes will be in place soon, but just how soon that might be, she couldn't say. Catherine Cullen, CBC News, Ottawa.
Back to local stories now. Windsor is known as the country's Motor City, but a guest curator at the Chimchuk Museum wants you to know that there's a cycling history to be proud of as well. It's been more than a year in the making, but the exhibit called Windsor Cycling City is now open to the public.
Boom, the first thing they're going to see is a velocipede or bone shaker. For obvious reasons, look at those wheels, built in roughly 1867. I mean, the most exciting thing for me is to know that bikes were manufactured here in Windsor. It's the Motor City of Canada, and we should be proud of that. Lots of generations of people who have proudly built cars here, but we've also built other things too, including bicycles. And so we have the 1897 Evans and Dodge bicycle, which I'm really proud to have in the exhibit. Really, it's a beauty, and I'm so delighted to have this one here because of the Made in Windsor aspect.
Is this your favorite one?
This is absolutely my favorite bike. You know, there's a cultural issue too, right? People say, well, what we can do with cycling here is limited because it's a motor city. I sort of push back against that and say, actually, long before it was a motor city, it was a really proud cycling city. And cycling remains an important part of our transportation mix. And I love that this bike was built just mere steps from here, from the Chimchuk Museum. I really like this bike because it's kitted out as well with a lunchbox and a toolbox. And it is, you know, for me, the perfect commuting bike. The first thing I hope they take away is that thing that they've known all along since they were little kids, that cycling is a joy. And in fact, we have some items here for little kids. You turn a wheel and the beads fall down. There is a more serious intent as well, and that's to say, look, Windsor is and has been a cycling city, and we should embrace that in all its dimensions, from recreation to commuting, to racing, to cross-border cycle tourism. And we're doing that to some extent, but I think we could be even doing more, and I hope that people feel inspired by our past to promote cycling and to get on their bikes in the future. And I hope when people come, they'll see the enthusiasm that we as a curation team here put into it, because it's been a lot of fun, and I think to some extent a story that got written out of Windsor's past. We're quite rightly proud of our rich local heritage, and so we're delighted to bring the spotlight onto this particular aspect of our engagement with active transportation for well over a century.
From our roadways to our waterways now. A Windsor scuba diver is being featured on a new episode of Drain the Oceans. It's a National Geographic show that explores shipwrecks, treasures, and other random things found underwater. This episode goes deep into the Detroit River and some of the cool things found right in our backyard.
They wanted to talk about Prohibition, they wanted to talk about the mob, and they wanted to talk about segments of how rum got across the river and whiskey during that time. So it was rum running, and that's the really focus of the episode. The river's very interesting. The visibility is not very good, so it's not what you picture when you picture Caribbean diving and you have 30 or 40 feet of visibility all the time. The river is very limited on what you can see. Usually, like today, you can see there'll only be inches of visibility. If you got down to the bottom today, you couldn't even see your fingers in front of your face. It's very limited.
Here are some items and photos of things that he's seen in the Detroit River. Now, although he didn't discover this sunken Ford Model T, he has seen it up close beneath the water. As for the show, Matt Zudima says TV crews came to film in the Detroit River last summer. And this episode of the show, Drain the Oceans, will air on Monday, the 27th on the National Geographic. A live look outside there. Love seeing the sun still shining at this time of night. A beautiful spring day today. We do have a chance of showers overnight. Colette will be here with more on the week ahead. Stay with us. The federal government is launching a study connected to the Ford government taking land out of the Greenbelt. It's looking into the effects on the neighboring Rouge National Urban Park. As Lorenda Redekop reports, it could have an impact on the province's development plans.
The Duffins Rouge Agricultural Preserve includes almost 2,000 hectares slated for housing development, land just beside the Rouge National Urban Park. The federal government is now going to study the potential impacts.
And I have requested that this study be conducted in a transparent manner, with information accessible to the public.
The federal environment minister was asked why he's calling for a study and not a regional assessment.
We would have had to collaborate with all levels of governments implicated, namely the Ontario government. That collaboration isn't possible, so we're using a different tool, but to get to the same goal.
As for what this study could result in if it does find negative impacts on the park, he gave an example from Montreal's South Shore. He stopped a development project under the Species at Risk Act.
I have no problem with it. It shouldn't slow down our development plans. It's adjacent. It's not right there. But good luck to them. And we're going to build a beautiful community there. And the park is absolutely critical.
The opposition parties side with the federal government and disagree with the Premier's take.
It's concerning to me that he sees it that way. Any development in that Greenbelt has an impact on other nearby adjacent areas, so it is significant.
I don't think the Premier understands how ecological integrity works.
One former Progressive Conservative member of Parliament says they had considered adding the agricultural preserve to the park when creating it, but decided it wasn't needed.
So we said, okay, well, they're already saved, they're preserved. Mike Harris in 1995, he thought it was important, and he saved it. Dalton McGuinty thought it was important, and he saved it. So we thought that, okay, it's saved. But now we've got, with the stroke of a pen, maybe it isn't.
It's a clear disagreement between the two levels of government.
I profoundly disagree with Premier Ford on this. This is not a project that's aimed at stopping development.
He says housing is needed, but that it should be strategic. Responding in French, Guilbeault told reporters if he were a developer, he'd think twice before starting a project on the land. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
Colette Kennedy joins us now for a look at weather. And Colette, you're wearing yellow, which is wonderful because we got to soak up the sun today. You're bringing more sunshine for us.
Yes, I feel kind of like a popsicle or creamsicle or
no, I love it.
something like that with the spring colors on here. Yeah, some nice conditions for sure. First full day of spring, and boy, Mother Nature performed. Normal height this time of year is only 8, and normal low -2. Okay, we weren't a record. It'd have to be close to 30 degrees. Can you believe that for it to be a record? But anyway, our current temperature is still holding on there at 12 degrees. A little cooler Chatham-Kent, a lot cooler. That temperature, Sarnia, with the wind at times coming off the lake and really dropping that temperature down. And you could kind of see it. See that northeasterly flow there, the arrow going this way. Complete opposite. Windsor, and for Chatham-Kent, now it's direct off the lake, and that's brought your temperature down, but it had a little more of a southwesterly kind of component to it a bit earlier. So a little bit of a frontal boundary here that moved through, some snow to the north, light showers to the east. A lot of that, even that's, and I know there's not much, but that's showing up there on the radar, wasn't even reaching the ground. So that virga, it's just in the upper atmosphere and being caught by the radar, but not even making it to the ground. But there's going to be some changes in that because and you can see that frontal boundary goes all the way back here to the northern plains, right? But this batch of moisture here coming in towards the Ohio Valley, and that's headed our way. So we go back in for a closer look here and just kind of show you how this is going to progress. So through most of the overnight hours, we're dry, and then some very light showers push in as we get towards 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, very early morning. Still could have some really spotty but wet roadways. Then there's kind of a break in things. And then we're going to have another batch that's going to come in. And that round, a little more significant. So late tomorrow evening and into part of the overnight hours. But what I will say about this is it kind of makes haste. So once that goes through, Thursday morning, we're going to get into some rapid clearing. The winds are going to pick up. I do want you to be aware of that. So we'll get into some gusty conditions with the winds Wednesday night and into Thursday. And your temperatures overnight tonight, 3 to 4 degrees for those lows, kind of similar to where they've been. But tomorrow, how about some double digits? Katarina coming back again for the next few days.
Thanks so much for that, Colette.
You're welcome.
When we come back, a few days ago, Donald Trump said he expected to be arrested. We'll bring you the latest. Former U.S. President Donald Trump remains a free man despite his own prediction that he'd be arrested today. A grand jury in New York continues to investigate accusations Trump made illegal payments to an adult film actress to remain quiet about an alleged affair. However, that grand jury is not sitting today. New York police have been putting up barricades around the courthouse in Manhattan. They're bracing for a potentially violent demonstration by Trump supporters if he is arrested. The former president, who is running for re-election in 2024, called for a protest over the weekend when he announced that he expected to be arrested today. In Florida, a group of supporters staged a rally near Trump's Mar-a-Lago home. Vehicles that are powered by gasoline and diesel fuel are significant producers of greenhouse gases. A lot of effort is being directed at getting passenger cars and light trucks switched over to electric power. But there are major gains to be made by converting larger vehicles like garbage trucks and heavy transports. And there's a company in the UK that's driving that process. Not only is it turning the trucks electric, it's extending the life of the vehicles for even more carbon reduction.
Luna's Applied Technologies takes vehicles that already exist in the commercial vehicle space and re-engineers them and upcycles them to clean air powertrain. We're looking at product life extension, and we're looking to how to re-engineer this product to give it a future for multiple generations to enjoy. This factory here today that we're in, it has 1,100 vehicle capacity. That is an Eiffel Tower's worth of embedded carbon saved over a year. So if you put that into perspective and you actually go see the Eiffel Tower, you'll realize just how catastrophic it would be to replace all of these vehicles with new. Taking into account fleet operators, every one of these vehicles has a different duty cycle. Some councils or fleet operators have vehicles that do 25 miles a day, some 100 miles a day. So we've created a system where they can scale up and down the battery pack size. This has a 6-pack on this vehicle, 3 on each side, but this can be scaled back to 2, 3 or 4-pack facility. Now, if a fleet operator decides to change the route that the vehicle is on, you can just add capacity by adding 1 pack. This upcycling process is so important. It's normality in so many industries. You look at this in aviation, you look at this in rail. These are common practices. In automotive, we've been so used to this replace with new cycle, but there's 2 billion vehicles on this planet, and we're now transitioning from ICE to EV. This is the obvious choice for so many vehicle classes.
That is it for CBC Windsor News. For more, go to our website, cbc.ca/Windsor. Thanks so much for watching and have a great night.